My guest today is actor and author Van Quattro, known for his roles in Fight Club, The Object, End of Days, and The Big Thing, and most recently out of Exile and Agnes. Now, he has also done many theater productions, along with several TV guest star appearances on shows like Picket Fences, Millennium, and LA Doctors and Chicago Hope, and so many more. And even in Dallas, he has been in the stage production of Superior Donuts at Theater 3, for which he shared the honor of Actor of the Year award with his co-star Chris Piper in 2012. Now, last year, Van directed the critically acclaimed Fooled for Love, and he has also written 3 books, with Eve being his 4th. And today, we are discussing his new book, Eve, a compelling story of 3 orphans growing up in the North and the South and back again in the 1930s. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome actor and author Van Quattro to the show. Welcome, Van.
Hi, it's good to be here, Ward. Thanks.
Well, it's great to finally meet you. I know that we're connected online through social media, and
Mhm.
you were also in a film. I believe it was Hellhound. Am I getting that one right?
Right, Joshua Dixon, director.
Yeah, Joshua Dixon's film, a very gritty
Yeah,
thriller, and yeah, you played an incredible part in that film.
yeah, it was fun. Let me just say that when you get a character like that, where anything goes, you just find the pocket and you just ride it out.
Well, for you though, which came first, becoming a writer or an actor?
Actor, actor. I started in a junior college, just trying it out to see what it was like. I liked the girls that I saw on stage, and I just thought that looks like it could be fun. And a friend of mine kept telling me you should be an actor because I would get myself into many social dilemmas here and there, where we'd be out partying in Hollywood and stuff like that. We'd always get invited to these things because people always thought I was somebody, even though I had no clue about acting or anything like that. So my buddy just kept prompting me. He's like, dude, you should be an actor. You should be an actor. You should be an actor. And as it turns out, I suppose I should have been. Yes.
Well, how many auditions did you have to do before you got your first role?
Oh, man. First role in theater, I worked at a dinner theater. I was pulled off the junior college stage to do some dinner theater stuff. But I think my first role was a movie called 315. And it was with an actor called Adam Baldwin, who was the lead in Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. And Dean Devlin, I think, was a part of that team, but it was a movie called 315. And I had like 4 lines as a detective outside of school. 315 was the old days. That's when you got out of school. I don't know what it's like today, but if there's a fight or anything going on, you'd say, "I'll see you at 3:15."
Uh, yeah, I know that time well. I know that time well. Now, how did you get the role for Fight Club?
Wow. I auditioned for it, and I didn't hear anything back. And then a couple of months later, Beth's not Beth, but oh my gosh, I can't think of her name right now. The casting director. Um, and so I didn't hear anything for a couple of months, and then somebody said, "Hey, they're doing some more casting on Fight Club," and everybody I knew was trying to get on this film in LA. And they said, but it was extra stuff. And I went, I don't know, man, I'll go show up. So I get to the extra casting, and the guy says, have you been to principal casting yet? And I said, yeah, I was a couple of months ago. And he goes, well, wait here. So he went and made a call. They went and they saw me. They read me for the same role I read 2 months earlier, and then they booked me.
Wow, that
Yeah,
the audition stories just get crazy because I've heard other actors tell me that they went after a part, never heard anything, and many times they actually got chosen for the part, but someone forgot to tell
I'd like that problem.
them.
Like, you get all those calls right now. It's like, oh, really? You forgot, huh? No, I had the same thing happen to me with a big American Airlines commercials. I went in, I did what they asked me to do, didn't hear a thing, and then they were offering like $400 to be a stand-in or something. And I went, okay, I'll go do that, whatever. And I get there, and they put me in the exact same scene they didn't book me in, and I made a ton of money off of that commercial. It's just, you're right. It's absolutely nonsensical.
Yeah,
It totally,
some I think
as
they
much
have
as
two. Yeah, go ahead, Van.
saying as much as we hard as hard as we work on these things and we project and we try and blah blah blah, it comes out of left field so often.
Sometimes I think that there's too many chiefs in the kitchen when it comes to casting, and things get, they fall through the cracks. And I hear about it all the time.
Sound.
It's the craziest part of the business, I think, is casting.
Yes, yeah, I would think so. And but from my point of view, I'm sort of like, when you see that person, hire them. What's all this talk? Why do you got to go through all this stuff and months of deliberating? Just hire the person. Well, you know what I mean? It's just like, okay, man, you're in my movie, and that's the
Yeah.
way it's for me. I mean, even with my guest star roles. I mean, when I was doing guest stars for Picket Fences and Millennium and stuff like that, I'd go in, I'd do the audition, and I'd kind of know walking out the door that they were. That's when you went into a room with like 6 producers at a time, and you had to read for all these people live. And when you leave, and that vibe is really good. I mean, I'd get the call before I got home. You got the part. And so that's, that you get spoiled. You get spoiled like that. This waiting 2 or 3 months stuff is crazy.
Well, are you having to do self-tape auditions?
Hmm. Yeah, which I gladly do. I love them. I love them. I know people speak in direct opposition to them, but man, where else can you get 5 chances to get something right? You can't do that in the office. You can do it on your reel if you're taping. You can go, man, I didn't like that. That's not quite me. I
Yeah,
want to
I
make.
hear pros and cons on both. I have some that want to walk into the room in person, do it live, and then there are others that are like, no, I love self tapes because if I don't like it, I can just start over and then send the one in that I like the best. So
Yeah. I don't suppose I dislike going into the room, but it saves on driving and gas and stress and to send out a tape. And like I said, you can get it to the best of your ability. And if you don't, then it's on you. you,
yeah,
you didn't do enough.
that's true. Now, for you, when did you start writing novels?
I started doing some writing back in like mid '80s, stuff like that. But because I come from such a wild background, it was just sort of like, whoa, I really did that, that kind of stuff, where I just tried to tell the truth on myself a little bit, and it started to escalate, and it began. So my first 3 books are autobiographical. Uh, um, Love Lucky, When We Get Married, and Sockeye. They're autobiographical books, told with some humor and self-deprecation. I never throw anybody under the bus, but there's a lot of people, a lot of notable people in the books. And I mostly just tell on myself because it's sort of a cleansing. And not only that, but when I knew during my life that I was going to be who I was, and what I was what I did growing up, and that it someday was going to parlay into something. And
Well,
so I kept on whatever path it was. That was the most adventurous, exciting, and daring.
where did the idea come from for the newest book, Eve, and what is it about?
Um, my mother was an orphan in those days in New York. I don't know much about her past because they come from a generation that's very secretive. They don't want you to know there was anything out of wedlock. They're just very secretive about their past. Um, but she was an orphan with her sister in New York, and they kind of had a rough life. And they went to They went to, orphanages, and they finally got placed here and there. And so it was a bit of a dedication to her. Um, there's some autobiographical stuff in there, but I don't know. In these days and times, I just think that there's so little daring and truth being told, that people want to be right, politically correct. They're afraid of offending. They're afraid of doing this. And when I write, I just try to write from my truth. I don't know what I'm writing. It just comes out.
Well,
After a while, Eve just kind of flowed and did its own thing. I had no idea.
Eve is, and I'm not, and truthfully, I'm not a big reader of fiction because I'm always reading biographies. I'm reading autobiographies. I'm doing so much research because of maybe certain guests that I'm going to interview. So I'm always reading the backstories. But with Eve, all I can say is wow, because from the opening pages of this book, it kept my attention to the very end, 440 pages later. I mean, and with this book, there are so many layers to peel off here. So who is Eve?
Eve, well, Eve was my mother, but she's also, if you want to put it in biblical terms, or if you want to put it into religious terms, she's another coming of something to aid mankind. Somebody that absorbed all the sins, not the sins, but the pains of mankind. And that was her life, that she became a conduit. And not only that, but she gave birth to a very special being. So it's man, I just want mankind to be good.
Well, and I picked that up.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, but there's, I've been told in this book that people couldn't get through it. They said, oh, he needs sensitivity training. Oh, he needs this. He needs to stay in his lane. Really, some harsh criticism. And I was like, well, that's all I know how to do. So if you're criticizing that, you're not going to get very far, because it's what I do. It's not. Yeah, it's the way I write. I can't do it any other way.
Those that criticize this book are blind. They are one-sided, very biased. Because when I read the book, I was astonished. I mean, first of all, the trauma that Eve had experienced. I mean, you as a writer were able to create this sense of innocence about her throughout the whole book. Even because of the bad things that happened to her, I never pictured her as being dirty. I didn't really picture her as being damaged because of the way that she was able to hide a bit of that. But also part of that is she couldn't remember until, and I like the way that you eased in the remembrance of some of those traumatic things that happened to her, and how you did it so slowly throughout the book. So anybody who thinks that you need sensitivity training is an idiot.
Well, thank you. I mean, I do think in those terms, and all I can say again, Ward, is I try to write what I think is real, and I won't hold back. And that's all I have. That's all I have is my word, is what I put on the paper, what I think I believe in, what I think these characters believe in. That's all I have, and I'm going to try to tell it in the most provocative way possible.
And you did. And but and then when people think of the word provocative, they're always thinking the negative, or they're thinking something dirty. And it's not. This book, you have truths in here that blew me away. I mean, Eve is based in the 1930s New York as well as New Orleans. If I didn't know you, I would have sworn that this book was written by a Black author, because you perfectly and meticulously wrote from the Black perspective, which literally blew me away. I mean, how did you perfectly depict the plight of Blacks in your book from their point of view? And did you do any type of research in this area?
Um, I was told by a couple of people of color that I should stay in my own lane, um, and it hurt for a minute, but then I kind of went, well, it is my lane, and I'll explain why. I grew up I went to juvenile hall as a kid. So I was always around people of color, bad kids, troubled kids, hanging out with troubled kids, even when I got out. So it was all very familiar to me. All lifestyles were very familiar to me. I was constantly faced with those kind of situations, fights, this, that, understanding other people, understanding Black culture, understanding Latin cultures, things like this. When you're put in a small cell or a small unit with a bunch of people, you start to get to know who they are, what they're doing. And here's the
That's all right.
here's the thing: we're all the same. If your culture's different, if you eat different foods, if you have different inclinations, you have different expressions about things, we're all the same, looking for the same thing ultimately. And I tried to find magic in the culture. There's a magical sort of, you have to suspend your belief in Eve to some degree because there's magic in it. But I've tried to make that. I wanted it to be about the fantasy, about the magic, about the way we can dream as human beings, about the resources available to us to make sparks in the air and think in those terms, because we don't. We think very, very, very practically, and we're dug into our traditions and I tried to make it clear through. I forget the character's name, but the one that first takes them on in New Orleans.
Yeah, Lou.
Trying to understand who they are, but he doesn't have the capability, but he's trying. He's trying to understand. He's trying to break the code as to why he dislikes them,
Yeah, and it's and Eve is an extremely interesting character because you slowly reveal her traumatic past. But her present, she's almost stoic in a way, because she is still trying to figure out who she is. She never really learned what her real name is. She never knew who her parents were and how she ended up in the situation. So even as she was growing up, she was still trying to put pieces together, but she still kept that very childlike quality about her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, that's incredibly important, because that's what we start as. I mean, there's so many times when I just look at mankind and I go, what happens from the age of 6 to 30? What happens? Because we sure screw up a lot after that. I mean, when you see children and they're so beautiful and they have that innocence, and, what happens? Is it society? Does society just like make us deranged beings, where we want to kill and we're jealous and we want to hate and we want to do this? Or is it just inherent in us that we need to seek out something else? I don't know, but I was trying to pose that question,
You had many questions. I mean, with each of the characters, you were always able to take each character and they always posed a question. And it's really a question in which we can all ask ourselves. I mean, if it was a question based on how in the world did I end up here, or why are we fighting a war that is in another country that we technically have no business being a part of? Why is our government sending all of these young men over there to fight something? And half of them didn't want to go. The other half wanted to keep the patriotic spirit alive because of family tradition. And
Hmm.
but your building of the characters went deep. I mean, even to a spiritual like depth with some of them. I mean, for you, what is your process when it comes to creating your characters?
You know, as I said earlier, I think that once you get started and you feel like you're on a path, you just kind of figure out what that character wants, and not what they want from the liquor store or what they want from the candy store or Walmart, but what their true spirit being was. And then you kind of go from there. I mean, it's all based in needs.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite character outside of Eve and Ollie was Miss May. I mean, she was wise but a feisty woman. And
Yeah.
how did you end up creating Miss May? Because I just love her.
You know, it was a combination. There was a play I did a long time ago called the I want to say Catcher in the Rye, but of course that's not a play. It's The Time of Your Life by William Soroyan. And it takes place in a bar, and it's 3 hours, and it's around World War II. He won the Pulitzer Prize in 1939 for it. It's a beautiful play. But there's a character in there named May, and she was a what do you say, a streetwalk, a
Uh,
woman of the night.
well, yeah, but she really was really the madam, right?
Yes, but and I kind of like that character, so I started building around that, and then you start building because of your circumstances that you've already created. So you've got to find the pocket for it to fit in there, And I got lucky. I mean, I don't, I just got lucky. I had some characters that did some really, in my mind, some really fun stuff, and I can't tell you how.
Yeah,
I
I
can tell you.
like the interaction between Miss May and Mrs. Hugs, and it made me laugh. And I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but I'm just kind of glad she didn't kill the woman. She actually showed mercy.
Yeah, yes, because we all have mercy in us, and not because not because I was trying to soften it. It's because that's who she is. I wasn't trying to like, oh, I don't want to show doing that because she came darn near doing something really, really she might regret. You know, but I just thought, well, she's a merciful woman.
Yeah, and I was really surprised in how she kind of had this protective mothering instinct when it came to Eve. She
Hmm.
didn't want Eve to end up in the life with
Yeah.
all the other girls in the hotel. She really kind of, gave her a bit of wisdom. She also gave her warnings. And in a way, she was actually happy when Eve came to her and said that she was leaving, not
Hmm.
realizing what the next situation she was walking into.
No, right. But May was very supportive. Um, and when I think about her, I just think about May and what her life was like after all this. You know, after the place burned down, after her parents burned, after her, she lost some girls. I mean, what's life like after that? I try to put them all in sort of the same situation of life is overwhelming and overbearing and can be very cruel, but there's hope. There's magic somewhere.
There is even a very minor character in your book that really played a very vital role, and that was the Armenian man who gave Rollie, the other orphan brother, A Ride to New York. I mean, he
That's another
imparted.
inspiration by William Soroyan because he was Armenian.
Well, he gave Raleigh some wisdom along the way, which I think some of that wisdom actually stuck to Raleigh to the end.
Hmm. Yeah, I loved Rollie because I thought he was one of the characters that had the highest sort of arc. In other words, to go from his combative, vengeful place to a place of kindness and understanding. And and it was delicate because you don't want to, somebody to make that cathartic move without showing it. Because if you can just go, oh, he became a nice guy. Oh, really? Why? How? But I tried to build that in, and his love for his brother. It's all about love, I think. I mean, it's for me. This book is about love. So, and that devotion to my mother, who probably wasn't the best mother in the world, but she did her best based on what her story was, and she brought some wonderful kids into the world. And it's about my son in a way as well, because my mother had me, I had my offspring, my son Case, who's 24, and he's light. He's light in the world. You know, he's a thinker, unfortunately, and a passionate kid. Thinkers can get themselves into trouble. They think too much and they start pondering too many things, and it all gets clogged up in the brain. That's why we have to get it out and express. We try to get it.
But when I look at your characters like Miss May with Ollie and then Rollie and then Leroy,
Leroy, yeah.
um, and then you give them each their own perspective of life. But
Hmm.
because those four, they're the black characters in this book, but their perspective of racism at that time, even their perspectives would actually fit in 2024. And that actually saddened me.
Yeah, yeah. This was written around COVID time. So I think there's a lot of that overshadows it. That it is, and George Floyd. This was written, I was writing this during the George Floyd thing. Um, so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like, come on, people, can't we just get it together? Come on. Like I said, what happens from the age of 6 to 30? What did Hitler look like as a baby? We were babies at one time. How did we go so mad?
Yeah, but you showed the different, and you also showed the differences between racism in the North versus
Hmm.
racism in the South. And even in
Hmm.
the 1930s, there was still this massive separation. It's almost like the Civil War lingered for another 100 years.
Yeah, yeah. And literally,
Literally.
yes, they were still practicing some of the things from that time. And in some of the smaller places in Louisiana, look out. Even the boys say, "I'd rather be up here in New York any day than down in Louisiana." You know,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
and but again, when it came from the black perspective, I think you nailed it 100%.
well,
And
thank you.
and I don't think, and which makes it even more astonishing is you being a white author. And that's what blew me away, because I'm like, wow, finally somebody can look at the other side and actually understand. And then even those that are black, that if they when they read this book, there's no way they can deny on how you built the stories and the words that were said, the perspectives that were given, because they were all 100% truth. I mean, I was reading this post on Instagram yesterday, and somebody was going on about, white supremacy again, and I'm just like, you people have no freaking clue what those two words actually even mean. You're using them
Mhm.
as a blanket upon everybody that's white, and that
Mhm.
alone is racism.
Mhm. Mhm.
But your perspectives showed, out of anything that I've ever read, of any black musical artist I've ever interviewed or filmmaker, you put it in the truest perspective that still to this day, things need to change.
Mhm.
And it's not an easy change because
Right.
mindsets are hard to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And the same thing with war. There's a line in there which I really love. I do, and it's probably been said, but uh, where Jake is talking about his dad, and there's a line in there where he says that fathers come home and deny telling their sons what actually happened in a war, thus creating an avenue for them to go because they don't know what took place. Once you know what took place in a war, there should never be another war with that kind of horror. How can people come back and go, yeah, let's go get them? Once war is done, it should be done. And we've done it through the ages. We keep doing it. We keep doing it. We keep doing it. We think we have some kind of domination over something. We don't. All it does is it screws up a lot of people's lives forever.
It does. And I think even in present day,
There's
anytime
so
that
many.
somebody wants to start a war, they don't really think of the actual human element of war.
No.
They're thinking of all of their fighter jets and their aircraft carriers and all of their missiles, thinking that we can just fight this from the air and nobody gets hurt. But then somebody does die, and they're like, "Oops, I didn't see that coming." And I'm like, "You're an idiot because you
Yeah, of
knew it
course.
was coming, but I think governments are so emotionally separated from the actual act. But in your book, when you wrote that scene with Jake, when he and all of his comrades came off that boat and stormed that beach, and the way you describe that scene, that's what war really is.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I was grabbing. I've been in some very harrowing physical violence before. So, I mean, I was grabbing, um, but nevertheless, I was trying to capture the feeling, the
You did.
reality, the sand and the blood, and your buddies dying and their spirits leaving their bodies, and on the beach in mass.
Yeah, when you wrote it in such a way that even when I was reading it, I'm like, okay, what would I do if I was Jake?
Hmm.
I would probably do the exact same thing. Literally lay there, and your only signals of possible safety is waiting for the sound of silence.
Hmm.
And then you're almost afraid to move.
Then, yeah, you could be deked. They could be just
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Oh, horrible, horrible
Yeah.
situation.
But you played that whole scene perfectly. But this book really brings forth this love triangle of sorts between Eve, Ollie, and Jake.
Hmm.
What I loved is that you kept it physically innocent, which I appreciated. I mean, what you wrote, that's life. Things
Hmm.
like that happen. But Eve was the one in control the whole time in
Yeah.
her own way. Um,
Yes.
and it was quite a dance you created amongst all three of them.
Well, I think that the first thing. Thank you. One of the first things was that they had to ultimately respect Eve greater than anything else they've ever had in their lives before. They had a respect and a certain a love, even if it was unrequited. They had to love her. And that made it a little easier, once I found that thread, that it's like these guys truly love her, truly. Um, and so it's going to get sticky here and there, you know. And Jake has his little sort of slight date rape situation with her, you know, where he pushes it a little bit too far and he's remorseful. And I thought, but of course he would. This is what human behavior. This is what, and if they were in that situation with that character, that's what that character would do. And Ollie's sadness and about his sadness about her leaving the world. But he also had this incredible uplifting reaction to her leaving. You know, that it was about something bigger than him. That's what it was. It's about something bigger than us, I think.
And yeah, it is.
You
You
know?
know, and what I loved was the emotional courtships were very wonderful to experience in this book. And I think as a society, we lack true courtship today, especially in the
Mhm.
dating world.
Oh, yeah.
Again, you know, there was something so pure in creating all three of their scenarios because both Ollie and both Jake, they loved Eve so much, and that a lot of that love came from an emotional level, not a physical level. Van, there was something that I noticed throughout the book that impressed me a lot. Each character had their own idea of who God was. Why was that important to show their spiritual vulnerability?
I think because I'm trying to debunk the idea that we need to classify religion, that we need to become secular, that we need to become, you know, we need to hate the opposing team, the Lutherans or the this or that or the I mean the Arabs, the Muslims. We have to alienate and destroy because people have their own ideas, and as long as we're on that same wavelength, I don't care who you call your prophet. I don't care. It doesn't matter. And I was trying to get that across in the book that these characters are learning something more than a secular vision. They're learning a broad vision of God, a broad vision of what this universe could be, a broad version of what we're capable of, that kind of magic realism that I tried to bring into it, that maybe we could create on our own if we weren't spending so much damn time killing each other.
And I picked that up. I picked that up because each one had their own idea and thoughts of war, of conflict, but I also love their own personal way of when they were in certain situations. Or maybe like
Mhm.
Eve, she was standing there by the river. She was pondering, but each one would have their own type of personal prayer to God, and I found I love that because each one was searching in their own way.
Mhm. They're all searchers. And I think searchers are the best people. If you're not searching, you're kind of stuck. You know, I mean, I kind of think that you're kind of archaic if you're not searching.
Now
You
with
got to be.
no, go ahead, Van.
We're not going to go anywhere if we don't search.
Oh,
Where are we going to go? Not looking.
yeah, very much so. I mean, when it was a couple of years or so. I interviewed actor Alan Arkin,
Oh
and
yeah, I love him.
yeah, and he wrote a book. It was kind of a mini memoir, and he called it "Out of My Mind." And the whole book was about him searching of what the true meaning of life was. Is there another? Is there a supreme being that we're to
Yeah.
look to or answer to? And his book was very enlightening on many levels. So when I saw these elements with each character in your book, Eve, it just added so much more to the story and to each of the characters. Now, I don't want to give any spoilers away here, especially the ending, but I love the whole story. And like you said, this is really a love story but there's also a metaphysical component to it, isn't there?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think that anytime we can explore these types of things, we might we might come up with something. You know, we just might come up with something. I mean, look at science now. Look at science. How uh, I don't want to say religion, but how faith and science and magic are starting to we're starting to not even know the difference anymore by what they're doing out in the solar systems and out in the universe, vast universes, what they're finding underneath the earth. How are they finding all these hidden places now? Well, I guess because we have the technology now to see what's going on, but they're finding whole cities buried under landscapes in the Middle East. I mean, we don't know diddly.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah. It's weird because here we are digging up the past, and we still don't have the whole story.
Mm-mm. No, no. And not only that, while we're digging up the past here, we're going out into the future in space. Oh, well, I guess technically we're going deeper into the past in space as well.
Well,
But by
yeah,
doing that, it's just sort of like a loop.
and yeah, because here we are entering. There's still a somewhat of a space race, so to speak, but we're going out in what we vision as the future. But we have to realize too, the stars and the planets are millions of years old.
Oh, I
So
know.
what we call the future is really going into the past all at the
Yeah,
same
absolutely.
time.
And we're going to end up. We're going to end up at that scene in Stanley Kubrick's 2001 where the baby's in the capsule and the guy's in the bed. That's what we're going to see when they finally get all the way out there. It's going to be Stanley Kubrick directing a.
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes I'm afraid that we may end up like the ending in Soylent Green.
Yeah. Well, there's that too. Yeah.
Well, for you though, is there any chance of maybe turning Eve into a screenplay?
Not by me. I would love for somebody to go, "Hey, I'd like to option this," but not by me. That's not me. I there's too many stops and starts in screenplay writing, and I'm a kind of a stream of conscious writer that it would drive me crazy. It really would. I think that they're technicians, screenplay writers, and I don't think I could do it.
Because
You know.
as I was reading every page, I mean, I could literally see parts of the story as a film. And for me,
Mhm.
I would
Well,
probably shoot it in black and white.
really, I
You
would
know,
love to see it as a film. Black and white would be kind of very cool, like Orson Welles kind of black and white.
yeah,
You know
very
what I
much so.
mean?
And and the thing is too, there was something else in the book that it's almost like you were erasing an invisible racial line, because with Eve and Ollie, he knew more that a lot of things would never come to pass because he was black. And in a
Hmm.
way, he was settled in that thought because he knew there was no way to truly change it. But
Hmm.
the relationship that you created between the two was just not only incredible, it was really beautiful because
Well, thank you.
she's white, he's black, but when you're reading it and you're reading their interactions with one another, you don't really see the color barrier until
Hmm.
his own thought process brought it up.
Hmm. Or an outside source brings it up again. Yes, I wanted to capture that. Thank you. I
Yeah,
wanted to
it was
capture
it was a very beautiful thing, a very innocent thing, and
when they were in the closet
what now?
for the when they were in the closet for the night.
Yes,
I don't
yeah,
know if that's a spoiler. They were.
yeah, and well, even the scenarios that you created for each of them, even
Yeah,
especially when they were together,
yeah,
it was still innocent.
yeah.
And
Oh,
and I love
absolutely.
the fact that Eve, she wasn't put off by it. She would
Mm.
always tell Ollie, "It's okay."
Yeah, she
You
was
know,
curious. And curiosity is not a sin.
that's
It's
right.
not. It's not a sin. They're just kind of going, oh, this does this. Oh, okay. Wow. Ooh, wow, it does that too. You know what I mean? What was it like for you? They're kids. They're just figuring stuff out. They got nobody to show them anything.
Yeah, yeah. Very. I mean, I think the part in the book, I think the part that probably brought a tear to my eye. There was two, but they were related. When Eve leaned into Jake's father, and then the mother Anne was wondering what is she saying to him, and then the part where uh, they were to, I guess, spread his ashes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when she finally, Anne was like, okay, I've got to know, what did Eve say? And I think
Mm-hmm.
both of those areas of the book, it brings a tear to your eye.
Thank you.
You you wrote one incredible novel there, Van.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's good to hear, because it's tough to get people to read a book. I mean, it's hard enough to get somebody to read, a 3-page scene. But when you say, I got a 440-page book that I'd really like to get your opinion on, they're like, oh yeah, send it over. You never hear from them, So I'm glad that you appreciated it. I truly am. It means a lot.
You're very welcome. I read the whole book, and ladies and gentlemen, if you are a reader, and I hope that you are, I mean, look, some of the great acting teachers, such as Stella Adler, is probably one of the ones. Maybe
Mhm.
Uta Hagen. The list goes
Mhm.
on. They will tell you, read, experience life. That's how you
Mhm.
become a more rounded person. And of course, she
Oh
was
yeah.
talking to her acting class when she did that. But
Mhm.
look, I hope that you are a reader. And if not, you need to be, because Van Quattro's Eve is a must read novel. Now, Eve, a severely abused young girl, awakens from her death deep in the subways, near death, I should say, deep in the subways of New York in 1939. Trying to find her way, she meets and shares a fantastic journey guided by an elusive spirit that is at times no match for the spoils of humanity. Now, Eve meets Ollie and his brother Rollie, young African American orphans, and a ragtag cast of characters move through the true reality of racism, child abuse, wisdom gained from the streets of the North and the South, and even in the depths of World War II, to finally find their purpose. It is a tale of hope and deliverance in ways that you won't see coming until you get to the end of the book. And I'm not about to spoil that one. Now, Van Quattro's writing style paints the picture for you, but adds the elements of emotions of love, pain, jealousy, and even fear. But then he adds a spirituality that millions will understand and find that they aren't alone in their own search for clarity, peace, and purpose. Now, Eve is available right now on Amazon as well as Barnes and Noble. And Van, I want to thank you for writing this book. And again, as for me, I can see this as a cinematic Oscar style movie in the future. And we need more books like this to make it to the silver screen.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ward.
Well, you're very,
I
very welcome.
truly.
And again, ladies and gentlemen, Eve, available on Amazon as well as Barnes and Noble. And for all of you, you can catch all the replays of our interviews with the top film directors and producers, screenwriters, actors, and more on Bond on Cinema. I want to thank you for watching, and as for me, I'll either see you at the movies, maybe reading a book, or hey, you may see me from the red carpet.
Woo!